we sit down at the table with the #1 state sponsor of terrorism, what message are we sending when we sit down with a country that is holding 4 Americans hostage? No different from the last time we had a weakling in the White House when we had 53 Americans being held hostage. What message do we send when we create this false narrative about either we sign this piece of paper that just the same meant nothing to Adolf Hitler, it means nothing to the Ayatollahs, or the only other alternative is to go to war? Well, let me tell you something. The United States of America is about victors. The United States of America is about champions. The United States of America does not surrender to a bunch of black robe, crazed clerics that want to see us destroyed.
Yeah! You gotta love that, man. Back on the Bernie and Sid show on WABC. That's the voice of our next guest. He's on the line right now. An American hero, Iraq war veteran, retired Army colonel, former congressman, Allen B. West. Good morning, Colonel West.
Good morning, Bernie and Sid, and Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Fantastic.
I don't know. I know that you were down in Florida at the same time as me. I actually used to work, Alan, for years with Joyce Kaufman. I came back to New York this year. About the same time you went to Texas, I came back to New York, but I worked with Joyce for many years.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I used to, WFTL.
That's exactly right. So while she was out there helping you out, and I was trying to help Marco beat Kendrick Meeks and Charlie Crist, which I did, by the way.
I remember.
Oh, those are So you moved to Texas now, though, right?
Yes, I'm the executive director and vice chairman of the board for the National Center for Policy Analysis. This conservative free market think tank, been around for 33 years.
Awesome.
So the big news, Colonel West, is that Donald Trump just met with your brother, Kanye West.
Right.
Oh, here we go.
Stepbrother. We made that clear.
Jokes.
Yes.
But can you believe that he actually met with? I know you were at Trump Tower about a week and a half ago, and I
was there yesterday.
He's actually
Was
been
it
there
yesterday?
twice in the last week.
You listen. There's got to be a place for you in that administration. I mean, you are like the perfect guy for a Trump administration. That speech that we just played, and a million other things, by the way. Are you up for something? Can you talk about or?
Well, I can't divulge exactly, what's being discussed, but there is a possibility, and, it's just a great honor that a kid born and raised in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia can, one day sit down and be interviewed to be part of a presidential administration. That's the greatness of America.
You like Donald Trump, Alan, the whole way through, because, again, his critics will say that he said things that were racist, that were homophobic, that were, you name it. He basically offended every single category of person out there. Was there ever a time you were offended by Donald Trump, or you were with him from day one?
No, I'm not offended by, what people say. Remember, I used to be in the military, and, drill sergeants used to say things about me that were much worse, to include, my wife now, who is a Brooklyn girl. She can be kind of tough on me as well. But the thing is that America was not looking for a savior to be in 1600 Pennsylvania, as opposed to the liberal progressive left, which is what they tend to look for. We were looking for someone that is tough, someone that can stand up and restore that sense of honor, strength, and resolve in this great nation. We're tired of seeing, our sailors on their knees at gunpoints, or, our ships being harassed. That's not the America that we know and love. We're tough people, and it seems that we wanted a tough president, and that's what we got.
And how about this, Colonel West? I know you have some thoughts on it. The crybaby sore-losing left. First it was the Comey letter, then it was fake news. Now it's the Russians helped Donald Trump win. It couldn't possibly be that she was a horrible candidate. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's very simple. The left is going to look for a straw man, and they're going to come up with anything instead of, looking at themselves. And the fact that you have them, they reelected Nancy Pelosi to be the House Minority Leader, and you have Chuck Schumer as the Senate Minority Leader, that shows that they still, as Representative Tim Ryan of Ohio said, they have become a party of coastal elitists. And when you think about the fact that they're considering Keith Ellison to be the chairman of the Democrat Party, that tells you that they did not get the memo from the American people.
No. Well,
and,
You're right. And before we delve deeper into Keith Ellison, somebody Bernard's been talking about for quite some time, I'll ask you this, Alan. You're a rational guy. You're down from Florida. Why can't it be both? Why can't it be that they are sore losers, that Hillary did a bad job, she didn't go visit the state she should have, but at the same time, if in fact the Russians had information on both the RNC and the DNC and only leaked one, why can't it be both?
Well, because they don't want to look at themselves. They'd rather have that scapegoat out there and that fallback.
But forget about them. Forget about them looking at it. I'm talking about from a rational point of view. Take the bias out. I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican. We know the Democrats are sore losers. We know they're crying now, blah, blah, blah. But if, in fact, the Russians did help, even a little, well, that's not good either, is it?
Well, I don't see how the Russians could help. I don't see how the Russians could, tell Bernard and Sid and Allen West, this is who you should vote for. I don't remember Vladimir Putin running one commercial advertisement. I don't, see them going into any election machines and hacking into them. So this whole thing.
But what if they got them the emails? What if they got Assange those emails that eventually did come back to bite Hillary in the ass somewhat?
Well, you know what? You shouldn't have put those emails out there. We had a very simple saying down south that never do something in private that you don't want to see or have people read in public.
Right, exactly right. Exactly right.
So
listen,
again, it comes back to the Hillary Clinton and her campaign. She was a flawed, failed candidate. They did not have a message, and the American people, spoke.
And the Russians did not make crooked Hillary pimp out the State Department. They didn't make her and Donna Brazile cheat and CNN cheat at the debates. It wasn't the Russians who made her lie about Benghazi and insult voters, as you said.
Well, and also remember that, Hillary Clinton and through the Clinton Foundation, they cut a deal with the Russians on this uranium.
Thank you.
No one talks about that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Well, where's the investigation into that? 20% of our uranium supply, which is finite, a lot of people don't understand, that was sold to the Russians, and they profited off it because of her position at the State Department. That is so corrupt and stinky, and nobody says squat about it.
No, that doesn't fit the narrative. We know that.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the narrative for a second, Alan, because, again, I happen to like you, to know you from the days and far. Bernard loves you. We're happy to have you on the program. We really are. But anytime we bring on a guest, I've got friends on both sides that are liberals and on the right. And they've all got something to say about a guest. So, for example, my buddy texted me this morning. He said, "You're having Allen West on today?" I go, "Yeah, I like Allen West." Yeah, but he's the same guy that put on his Facebook page, "We should slaughter all the Muslims." No wonder he loves Donald Trump. What about that?
No, well, first of all, your friend should read and understand that, someone else put that on my Facebook page. They were part of our social media and website team, and that person has resigned. I had no knowledge about it. As a matter of fact, I was in a commission hearing down in Austin, Texas for 2 days, Thursday and Friday. I found out on a Saturday, and I took care of it. So your friend is, horribly misinformed, but that's how the left rolls. They don't want to get the full story, and that's where all these false news stories come from. So your friend should consider himself corrected now.
F him. He's not my friend anymore. I'm getting rid of him.
And speaking of fake news, by the way, Sid mentioned that the RNC was hacked as well, and they didn't release those details. The RNC was not hacked. They were not hacked, so the Russians did not have the RNC information to release. They did have the Democrat stuff, and all of a sudden everybody's worried about cybersecurity. At least the Democrats are. They weren't worried about it when Hillary had her server out there, her private server in her basement. All of a sudden now it's a big deal.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is that if you have a private email server that is having classified information go across it, tell me what soldier, sailor, airman, marine could do that. You have a U.S. Navy sailor who took 6, photos in the classified section of a nuclear submarine. He's now serving 15 months in prison for what he did, and he owned up to it. But yet we have a person that we know was using classified information over an unsecured means, and they got to run for president, and nothing is happening, and everyone, basically says there's no there. Well, it's these type of double standards of the cultural elite and intellectual elite and political elite that has the everyday Joe and Jane six-pack of America just incensed, and especially those of us who have, served in uniform. I had a TS-SCI clearance, and I guarantee you if I did 1% of what Hillary Clinton had done, first of all, I would have my clearance revoked. Second of all, I would, without a doubt, be dishonorably discharged, and I could be going to Fort Leavenworth.
Yeah, no, listen, I think that's fair. That's a very fair criticism. Then I'm going to ask you about Jim Comey, Alan. I know that Harry Reid is yelling and screaming about how he should be investigated, and we saw what he did in July. Then we saw what he did again in November. What about Jim Comey?
Well, Jim Comey kind of painted himself into a very bad box. If you just stand up for the rule of law, you'll always be right. But if you start to be influenced through politics, you will find yourself chasing your reputation. And I think that the whole episode over there in the Department of Justice, from the point when Bill Clinton meets with the Attorney General on a tarmac in Arizona, everything went downhill from there. So we need stand-up kind of people, and I think that that's what the Trump administration will bring.
Now, Colonel West, you served in Iraq, and this goes to the ill-advised tweet that your staffer put out. He was trying to send a message. It was poorly worded, but his sentiment was, I think, on the money in that President Obama...
No, it was a she.
It was a she. Okay. President Obama ignored the whole ISIS threat, and he had people like... General Mattis and General Mattis and General Flynn telling him that ISIS is on the rise and they're on the march and you got to do something. And he said, no, they're the JV team. Now he's blaming the intel. He's saying these days that that nobody was telling me, and it's clear that we have tape of people telling him in conferences that that ISIS was on the rise. And you served there, you admirably. He pulled the troops out. ISIS is now, all over the place in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. So tell us, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, it was a campaign, an intransigent ideology that led President Obama to make what will go down in history as one of the greatest strategic blunders ever, to completely withdraw all of our troops from Iraq. That would be the same as we had completely withdrawn from Germany after World War II, and you would have allowed elements to see a resurgence. But for the president just last week on CNN with Fareed Zakaria to sit there and say that ISIS came in beneath his intelligence radar screen, that tells me something. Either you were not listening to the people that were providing you briefings, and you should not be counseling, Donald Trump about taking intelligence briefings, or you are just that much of an incompetent commander-in-chief.
Or you're lying.
Or you're lying.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, without a doubt, again, you find someone that is looking for everyone else to blame than himself. Remember, Harry Truman used to say the buck stops here. That's not the case with Barack Obama, and we're tired of the excuses. And, if we should be conducting any investigations, we should be conducting an investigation as to why this horrific, savage, barbaric Islamic jihadist group was allowed to rise in the last 2 years under President Obama's watch. And then last week, I believe, they come out and say 50,000 jihadist militants from ISIS have been killed. How do they know 50,000 have been killed? They didn't even know that they existed.
Fair point. Allen West here with Bernie. And said that's why some of these appointees, too, are so important, whether it's Mad Dog Mattis or Michael Flynn. But do want to ask you about Mitt Romney. We've been having having fun with Mitt between the Bernie and Sid show and the Imus show. There is a portion of us that believe that Donald Trump basically had Mitt Romney, had those two meetings to humiliate him, that he never really forgot how Mitt talked about him and wanted to make Mitt feel like he had a real chance at a real position, never really thinking he would give it to him. What do you think about that?
Well, anything I say would be subjective. I'm not privy to the meetings, and I'm not inside Donald Trump's head. But, he has named Rex Tillerson to be the Secretary of State for the United States of America. I understand his rationale for doing that, because here's a person that is a doer, not just an international careerist bureaucrat or a politician that is out there. And he sat across the table from good people and bad people. And he's had to be able to look them in the eye and make the deal. And that's the essence of who Donald Trump is. He's a businessman. He wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, and those are the type of people he's looking for. The only downside, of course, to Rex Tillerson being named Secretary of State is that you're going to kind of feed into the narrative of the liberal media and the progressive
Russians.
Left about the Russia thing. But, you just got to be prepared for that. And Mr. Tillerson, as his nickname out here is T-Rex, he's got to come in there like he's that big monster dinosaur in Jurassic Park.
Were you one of those people like Kellyanne Conway and a host of others that really despised Mitt for what he did a couple of months ago and really very happy he did not get a position with Donald Trump?
The thing that I could not understand is why he did not show that same type of resolve and passion when he was running against President Obama in 2012. That's the only thing. So,
hey, so listen, Donald Trump, Colonel West, finally, he is, as has been pointed out, he's an alpha male who, he commands respect, he inspires fear. Heck, he turned big bad LeBron James into a snowflake looking for a safe space, for God's sakes. So on the issue of Vladimir Putin, it's no wonder that a guy like Putin sort of respects Donald Trump. Now, wouldn't it be good if we got along with Russia? They're not perfect, but then again, if it benefits this country, let's get along with these people instead of fighting with them.
Well, I want to get along with them from a position of the high ground. I do not want to have a president that, as we say in the military, semper gumby, because when President Obama talked about his flexibility after re-election, we see what that means. I don't want to have a president or a Secretary of State that is giving out little yellow toy boxes with a red button and calling it a reset button, because we see what that is for me, Ukraine and Syria. Yep. So I want a serious person that, Vladimir Putin is about, I think, 5'5", 5'6". Donald Trump is about 6'3", 6'4". Yeah. I want Donald Trump to look at Vladimir Putin and say, "You may know judo, but I will crush you."
Yeah. Perfect. I tell you what, Colonel West, we love you. We love
good luck
you.
too, man.
What an American.
Yeah, good luck with Trump. Hopefully you get a nice position to come back on this show and tell us about it, okay?
I would be honored, and hopefully I can get into the studio and be with you guys.
That'll be great.
No doubt.
We love that.
We look forward to that. Colonel Allen West on the Bernie and Sid show, and we thank